Hi, everyone. It's John Dolan with UC Davis, and we will start in just another minute or so. We'll let a few other participants come in. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Just another 30 seconds, and we'll get started with the session this afternoon. Okay, it's 4 o'clock. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is John Dolan. I'm a public education specialist with UC Davis. Welcome to our Immersion Academy session today. On the phone is Ray Baris, Dr. Baris. He's the Senior VP for our partner here, Socratic Arts, and Lynette Velasco is our Program Manager. She is not with us today, but Ray and I can handle this, I'm sure. Let me go over the agenda very, very quickly. We'll be walking through the actual programs today, giving an overview of the cybersecurity immersion program experience, telling you what the 3 courses are. We'll go over some enrollment information, and then we encourage you to give us some questions as you see fit. If you hear something, you want some more information, use the chat box or the Q&A feature to give us your question, and we'll try to answer it dynamically. If we can't answer it, we'll have a Q&A session afterwards, and if that doesn't work, I will contact you individually with more information as needed. This is a more of an academic seminar. We have these once a month. There's a URL. Ray, if you go one more slide back, that's a URL that has more of the logistical information. That's cpe.ucdavis.edu IT. You can go to there to get some of the more logistical information. Today, we're going to go into the core of the programs. What's the educational experience? What's the learning opportunities? What are the features for this immersion program? So, Ray, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks, John. So, hello, everyone. You certainly know who UC Davis is, but you probably don't know who Socratic Arts is. So let me tell you a little bit about it. Socratic Arts was founded by a visionary cognitive science and artificial intelligence researcher, Professor Roger Schenck. And it grew out of the Institute for the Learning Sciences at Northwestern University. And we did about $50 million in sponsored research on how people think and learn and how to translate that into an effective online learning experience. And one of the things that our research and others led us to conclude is that the traditional model of listening to lectures, doing little well-defined homework problems, and then taking tests doesn't work. When I say doesn't work, that means that it doesn't promote the effective transfer of knowledge and skills from the learning situation to application in the workplace. So we completely rejected that model, and instead we've adopted a learn by doing model where you are put in an authentic role in cybersecurity. You're a cyber operations center, a security operations center analyst, you're a digital forensics analyst, you're a cyber operator, and you'll do the same tasks that professionals do. And as you do them, you're supported by extensive online material, and also kind of the secret sauce is knowledgeable human mentors, cybersecurity experts who are always available to give you help, advice, and feedback on your work. And we have found that to be very broadly effective over doing this for several years. So the program is delivered 100% online, but you're not working alone. You go through the program with a group of other students, and you'll regularly meet with those students in small groups. You're encouraged to work together on conceptual aspects of your work, but everyone has to do the hands-on work individually. And as it notes here, all work is done in a private cloud environment in Amazon Web Services. And the reason for that is you will be working with vulnerable machines, and in some tasks, you'll be working with live current malware. We don't want to expose those vulnerable machines to the internet, and we don't want the malware to get out. So we contain it all in a cloud environment. And our mentors won't lecture to you, but what they are is they're coaches. They'll give you help and advice as you need it. They'll give you feedback on your work. And we use a mastery-based approach, which means that, if your work can be improved significantly, and thus the mastery of the underlying knowledge and skills can increase, we'll ask you to redo it in light of feedback from the mentor and improve it. The cybersecurity program in particular was funded by the US Department of Defense. They spent $1.6 million on this program, and we have the sole right to offer it commercially in partnership with top tier universities like UC Davis.
Ray, I've got a first question for you.
Yes.
How recent is the development around this? Is this 10 years old? Is this 7 years old?
We initially developed it 2 years ago. We are constantly updating it. So things are pretty current. We are not, in general, in most of the program, dealing with some of the most bleeding edge nation state attacks. They're actually fairly difficult to work through as a student, but everything that we are doing is current and real. And so if you look at like the OWASP vulnerabilities of systems and things like that, you'll see the things that are listed as critical vulnerabilities of systems and networks are actually underlie the tasks the students will do in this program.
So the follow-up question was the tools that, the tools that will be deployed are the latest versions of those tools?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So we use tools like, if you do network traffic analysis, you use tools like Wireshark, which is the industry standard. If you're doing log analysis, you use Splunk, which is one of the industry standard security information and event monitoring systems. On the attack side, we are using the latest versions of Metasploit and various reverse engineering tools and a variety of things. So yes, everything is current.
Thank you.
Okay. So one thing that's nice about this program is because of this story-centered learn by doing approach, we can also emphasize some skills beyond purely technical skills. And these skills are actually very valuable to a person in a professional career. You'll get a lot of practice on analytical thinking, researching and solving difficult problems. You'll be reporting verbally and in writing. And you'll also be asked to do a good bit of self-directed learning. You'll be supported in that, but self-directed learning is a critical skill for people in this field because the threat landscape is constantly changing, and there's not always someone convenient you can ask what to do. So a lot of times you have to go out and learn things and figure it out yourself. And the program is divided into 3 courses, and some students do choose to take breaks between the courses, if real life doesn't permit them to just blast all the way through. So anyway, why study cybersecurity? Well, our sponsor at the Department of Defense is quoted as saying that there are probably about 1,000 people who have the skill to defend our infrastructure. And he says the number needs to be 100,000. And he is really lowballing that number. Because if you look below, you can see Cybersecurity Ventures predicts 3.5 million unfilled jobs by 2021 and an unemployment rate that's holding steady at 0. But let's talk about today. And these are numbers that are current as of today from the cyberseek.org job site, there are 72,000 open jobs in California right now, and there are 504,000 open jobs nationally. That's pretty incredible. I mean, there are very few fields that have that number of jobs that are just going begging. And job postings have grown 94%. And so if you look at that in comparison to IT in general, it's growing 3 times as fast as general IT job.
So Ray, a next question has come in. Speaking of jobs, so cybersecurity is not just about working for the government. Is that correct? Cybersecurity can, one of our learners works in IT at a hospital. They have some cybersecurity there. Can you speak to going beyond the public sector for jobs here?
Yes, over 90% of jobs are in the private sector. And many of the most vulnerable targets are in the private sector, and healthcare is something that hackers are increasingly targeting. And we actually do have a couple of people on staff who come out of cybersecurity for the healthcare industry. So they're actually very experienced with that. But when you look at these modern ransomware attacks and various other more sophisticated exploits, they're often launched against commercial enterprises whose protections are not perhaps as good as some of the top tier government entities. Although as you go down the food chain, so to speak, and start looking at cities and even state agencies, their cybersecurity isn't that good. And for example, just a couple months ago, 22 cities in Texas were infected with ransomware. And those are smaller cities. And so, I mean, just, every enterprise that has computers needs cybersecurity.
Good. So a couple other questions have come through. Can you talk about how the course prepares students for any particular industry certification and the value around that? And then does the mentors or does the program have resources for things like career planning and job searches?
Okay, well, let me answer the first one, then remind me of the second one after I get through. Okay, so there are industry standard certifications, and they are based on passing multiple choice tests. There is a term in the industry called paper tiger, and that's a person who can pass the test and get a certification but can't do the work. So our charge from the government was not to prepare people to take certification exams, but to prepare people to do the work. And so if you decide you want a certification after completing the program, we can point you to resources that will help you to get one. For example, the most common entry-level cybersecurity certification is CompTIA Security Plus. And there's a course on Udemy that you can take for $10.99 if you catch it when they're having a special. And it's a cram course for the test. That course will not prepare you for a job in cybersecurity. It will prepare you to take a test and get a piece of, and be able to say that you have CompTIA Security Plus. So we do not teach that per se in the program. And you do hear about more advanced certifications like CISSP or Certified Ethical Hacker. Those require several years of attested, paid professional experience before you can take those exams. So they're not at the entry level.
Good. And the second part of that question was resources for career planning and job searches. Okay,
so we do give you a lot of advice. We will give you help with your resume and with your LinkedIn profile, which is increasingly important, maybe more so than a resume. We will also give you strategic advice about a job search. So like it or not, just sending a resume into the black hole of human resources at a company will not necessarily get you a job because the HR people just can't evaluate the quality of candidates. So what we encourage you to do is to become active in the cybersecurity community. Go to meetups, go to conferences, meet people. The larger conferences all have what they call hiring villages, where you can actually talk to technical managers, not HR people. And so if you follow these strategies and if you kind of position yourself appropriately, we believe that you'll do okay, and we will help you with those things.
Someone is interested in, as they're taking the course, will they be able to do some ethical hacking while they're taking the course?
Oh, if you take the attack course, which is the third course, you're gonna hack day and night for several weeks. You will be working in simulation as a cyber operator, and so you will actually be doing those things, and those things are valuable. First of all, they're valuable to a defender who needs to learn to think like an attacker. Second of all, there's a job role called penetration tester, and this will put you on the path to being a penetration tester. But we strongly believe you need defensive experience before really being an effective penetration tester, because your job is to support defenders. And third of all, there actually are jobs working for government agencies doing this stuff for real.
Another question on jobs. What type of entry-level positions, what are some of the titles that someone would have in the cybersecurity world?
Okay, so the most common entry-level position is Security Operations Center Analyst. And a SOC analyst is somebody who monitors systems and networks for intrusions. Another job title is Digital Forensics Analyst, where you actually look at infected systems and other devices and determine what happens to them. There's a job Incident Responder, and those are the people after somebody has exploited a system or network who go in and clean up the mess. And then on the attack side, it just kind of, there's penetration tester in private industry, and there's cyber operator in government agencies. Are there other questions?
There's one more question that I'll answer. So Davis and Berkeley are both offering cybersecurity boot camps in partnership with Trilogy. So the question is, why is Davis offering both programs? And I will say that the boot camp that's out there is a much more traditional format, and that's for a particular style of user, of learner. That's a 6-month program where you meet 3 times a week at night. You've got a dedicated instructor in front of you with some TAs. And our immersion program here is a much different learning environment, a much different type of learner, which we will talk about a bit later. So we do have two offerings, but they're for different types of learners.
Yeah, so to add one more thing, the Trilogy programs are much closer to the traditional lecture and homework model. It's listen to a lecture, do an exercise, listen to a lecture, do an exercise, than this program. And I'll leave my comment at that. So shall we go on?
That's it.
So anyway, there are opportunities, in this area in cybersecurity. It's a big growth area, both in private industry and in government. And there's massive opportunity in the Bay Area if you want to live in the Bay Area. And so that's certainly something to consider, because the Bay Area probably has more cybersecurity jobs than anywhere else in the United States. So shall we talk about what the courses are?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the first course we call Immediate Immersion, and it is a 4-week short course, and we broke it off for a couple of reasons. Number one is we want to let you to self-assess whether you enjoy this kind of work and think you're good at it or will be good at it. And number two, we use this to assess your probability of professional success. And we'll be very honest with you about what we think your likelihood of professional employment is. It involves 2 learn by doing tasks. The first one asks you to think like an attacker. And you're working for a fictional government agency, and you need to verify that a particular website is vulnerable to a certain kind of attack. And then if it is, you need to fix it. And when I say fix it, somebody's probably going, uh-oh, do you have to be a programmer? The answer is no, you don't. What you have to be able to do is you have to be able to do good research using a resource like Google, and it will give you the answers you need to do the work. The second task is analyzing network traffic. And what that task is it involves an attack on the personal computer of a military aide. I'll tell you more about that in a little while, that particular task.
Ray, we've got another question before
Okay.
you go into course 2. Can you just go back to course 1? So this is a question after my own heart. I am 50 years old. I've got some computer skills. Is it too late to get into the cyber security field? And then second part of that question, intentional, is will I learn if this field is right for me by taking the immediate immersion class?
Okay, I'll answer the second one first. So the answer to the second one is yes. If you don't like this, short course and you don't do well in it, then this probably isn't a career for you. And some people do discover that. And yeah, it's hard to say if 50 is too old. I personally don't think it is, but your mileage may vary.
Thank
I know
you.
that's not a very good answer, but that's the best answer I can give you. Okay, go on.
Yes.
Okay, so if you continue from the immediate immersion course, you go into much more in-depth defensive course. And you do a number of tasks. In the first task, someone is attempting to break into a network, trying to brute force passwords on machines that are exposed to the outside world. You need to determine, if they have found vulnerabilities, if they've succeeded at doing that, and if so, what are those vulnerabilities? Then you'll go on and you'll investigate an attack against the network using what's called log analysis. All the devices in a network, all the computers, all the routers, everything is continuously record everything that happens, and they're consolidated into something called the Security Information and Event Management System. And you can do intelligent search, you can pivot through multiple logs, and it's a higher level way to analyze attacks. In the attack in question, you will discover malware. You will extract that malware, and it's going to be real current malware. It will be something called an exploit kit, which you can certainly look up there. It's a very interesting, insidious thing. It's got kind of like malware for hire, basically. You will use online sandboxes to analyze that malware to determine what are called its indicators of compromise. Then you will do digital forensics on an infected machine. You'll examine the machine's memory. And the reason that we start with memory is because a lot of modern malware has a minimal footprint on disk, if indeed it has any at all. So a lot of times you can only detect this stuff in the memory of a running computer or in an image that's taken of that memory. And then we'll also look at the disk of the infected machine to see what's there. And then something that's really important for professionals, and some people groan, but you need to be able to communicate your findings effectively. So you need to report effectively to business stakeholders, to technical management, and to the incident response team who's going to clean up the mess that you found. And so we do put emphasis on appropriate reporting. Was there another question, John? I saw kind of a flash.
No, we're good, Ray.
Okay. So the third course is our attack course, which we also call reverse engineering and exploitation. And so in the first three tasks, you're asked to analyze suspicious executable files without executing them. because they might be malware. They might infect your machine. They might infect the network you're running on. So you don't want to run them. And then in the fiction of the course, you're working for a government agency, and human intelligence uncovers that a Russian cybercrime group is behind those malicious files. So you will do open source intelligence gathering about that group. And we've created a very authentic social media site that's modeled on VK, the social media site, a version of Facebook, essentially, that's popular in Russia and Eastern Europe. And we've harvested hundreds of real hacker posts in Russian, and you'll have to analyze it and determine the power relationships in this organization. Then you'll exploit server and application software, first using techniques that are called buffer overflow exploits, and then using another, a more advanced technique called return-oriented programming. You'll experiment with a number of ways to evade antivirus software. And unfortunately, it's really easy to do. You will write and deploy custom malware. That means you will write malware and you will launch it against a target. And you need to exploit the target and accomplish a mission. Then you will spearfish a company by sending an infected resume to the HR department applying for a job. You'll get a foothold on the HR machine. You will use that foothold to access the personnel database using a technique called SQL injection. And you will exfiltrate employee data. But let me remind you, you're working undercover for the good guys. So the good guys are going to scrub that data and then before passing it to the bad guys. And then our old friend human intelligence comes through again and says, hey, you know, the FSB, Russian state security, is actually behind this cybercrime group. So you're going to strike back. So you're going to plan and execute a complex attack against the FSB in simulation. I mean, you probably don't want to do it for real, but you will certainly do it in simulation. Okay, questions? Anything, John?
So we've got a big question, which I'll answer at the end. How much is the program and how long will it last? You guys can go to the URL, but I'll answer that at the end as part of our general Q&A. Thanks, Henry, for that question. So Ray, one other question that's come through is, you know, it has to do with the persona, the student, the learner who succeeds in the academy. This has been running for some time now, and I've talked to some learners and students who have really liked the immersion portion. But can you speak from your perspective, the type of person who does well in this environment, the characteristics and qualities that someone should bring to this?
Yeah, so our sponsor at the Department of Defense actually did a major study on the characteristics of successful information security professionals, and we were informed by that. So a successful person is intensely curious about how things work. They will not give up on a problem no matter how difficult it is, because some of these problems are very difficult. And especially if you're a defender, you have to win every time, but the attackers only have to win once. So you can't throw up your hands and say, I don't know what to do. And you actually have to enjoy self-directed learning. Because although you will be well supported in this program, we will coach you to learn a lot of things yourself. And you do need strong basic computer skills. You do not necessarily need an IT background. It is helpful to have a basic understanding of computer networks and protocols, and we will recommend some pre-work for people who have a deficit in that area. And you can certainly learn it on your own. I mean, it's not that hard. But that's really it.
Great. So who teaches the course? Are there practitioners, Davis faculty, both?
Our organization provides the mentors for the program, and they are all expert practitioners. Our senior mentor has been a university professor. She was a professor at University of Massachusetts Amherst, and I've been a professor at Northwestern University and Carnegie Mellon University. But you know, most of your interaction will be with people who are hands-on practitioners.
Ray, how are mentors assigned to a student?
Well, what we do is we do a team-based approach, and there are certain types of work that our various mentors enjoy and are good at, and so you will see different mentors in different parts of the program, and we have a tiered mentoring system. So we have what we call tier 1 mentors, who are your primary contacts. Then we have tier 2 mentors who are hardcore industry experts, and we bring them in when needed to deal with difficult questions or particular problems.
I think we're caught up on all the questions right now, Ray.
Okay, great. So this has been kind of abstract right now, so why don't we look at a demo of this immediate immersion course and see what it's really like. Okay. So my first thing I always do at this point is I apologize. I'm going to play some video, and the video may not look very good on your computer because it's going multiple hops to get to you. If you were looking at this direct from our curriculum server, it would look great. It's professionally produced video.
There's not been as many protections as there should be in most, if not all, of these industrial control systems. And now they're connected to the internet.
We have the capability to do X, Y, and Z. And it can be done without ever setting footing in your nation. It can be done remotely.
Our critical infrastructure is very vulnerable.
We're 10 years behind the world's best hackers. There's probably really only about 1,000 people in our country right now that really have the level of skills necessary to defend our infrastructure. That number needs to be 100,000.
So this video goes on for quite a while and really frames the problem. And Frank DiGiovanni actually goes on in a second video to talk about how government and industry are looking beyond the traditional pool of candidates they consider for these positions, because the situation is so dire and there's such a shortage of people. So we've kind of gone through this by talking about the tasks, but you'll learn a broad range of defensive skills. You'll also learn reverse engineering and exploitation skills. And then again, you'll learn non-technical skills that are very important to professional success. So to review how the program works, it is what we call a story-centered curriculum. We developed this approach at Carnegie Mellon when I was a professor there. So you will play an authentic role in a realistic story of professional work. You'll be asked to do the tasks that professionals do, and you'll learn knowledge and skills just in time as they're relevant to the work you're doing. And you'll do that using extensive online performance support material that's key to the things you're asked to accomplish. And also, as I've mentioned a few times, the mentors are very fundamental in this process. And you will work with your fellow students on understanding problems you're asked to solve, and you are welcome to share experiences, but every student must do the hands-on work individually. We will not produce paper tigers. We will produce people who can do the work. A task is introduced by a fictional email or video call from a fictional employer. In this case, it's OXCC, which is the handle of the head of a fictional government agency called Cyber Team 10. You'll get a project roadmap, which is a high-level guide to accomplishing the work, but it's not so detailed you can follow it by rote. We have extensive learning resources that are key to this project roadmap. So when you're asked to do something, you can go to the learning resources, and there are things to support you in doing it. You'll submit your work in a learning management system, which is an online repository. Your mentor will provide feedback, And often when it's your first submission, it won't just say great job, but you get a lot more feedback than you thought. And your mentor is likely to ask you to redo your work and improve aspects of it so you'll deepen your mastery of the underlying knowledge and skills. Your mentor will have regular meetings with you and a small group of fellow students. Some of them will be group problem-solving sessions, and others will be what we call reflection sessions, where you'll talk about the important lessons learned in a task that you've just completed and how they can apply more broadly. Some of the things that we will teach you to do are illegal if done without appropriate legal authority, and we have zero tolerance for people abusing the things that they learn. But our disapproval is the least of your worries, because in many cases, if you do some of these things, you are committing a felony. And we will remind you of that constantly. So let's go ahead and look at the immediate immersion course, shall we? Oh, we got a call from our boss.
Welcome to Cyber Team 10. I'm afraid there's not much time for introductions and orientation. I'm going to need you to get to work right away. I'll follow up with an email to get you started. I'm sorry there's not more time to train you, but we're on the front lines and there are lives at stake. You'll have to learn on the job.
Wow, so much for easing into it, right? So anyway, OXCC follows up with an email, and he says that human intelligence intercepted a message between members of a cybercrime group. And what the message says is that the website of a key government supplier to the United States Navy, is vulnerable to something called a local file inclusion exploit. And if you're an experienced hacker, these few lines of text tell you everything you need to know to exploit that website and to own the server that it's running on. But since you're not, we're going to guide you through the process. And I'll admit this is a little artificial. Your boss says we don't want to leave the site vulnerable, but we also don't want to raise any red flags to let the bad guys know that we're on to them. So I want you to go in surreptitiously and verify that this vulnerability indeed exists. And then if it does, you're going to be asked to fix it. And so the goal of this is thinking like an attacker. So as I said, you'll do all your work in an Amazon Web Services private cloud environment. Students sometimes don't know quite what to expect. So on some of the early tasks, we videoed some of our very early students giving their impressions of the tasks. And this young woman is a high school dropout. She was working as a massage therapist. And now, a couple of years later, she's a respected member of the international information security community. She presents at conferences, and she has over 5,000 Twitter followers, and she posts about beginning careers in information security. So she talks about this task and about her trepidation in doing it.
It doesn't matter if it never would have occurred to you to do something malicious, because it will occur to somebody out there, and you'll be completely vulnerable when that somebody finds your server if you haven't taken steps to protect it in advance. And you can't take steps to protect it until you put yourself in the shoes of an intruder interested in getting in and messing around.
So she goes on, she talks about how it bothered her to be asked to do something illegal because she thinks of herself as a good person. But then when she realized she was learning to think like an attacker, she got into it. So here is the project roadmap. So the first thing we do is we introduce you to the private cloud environment where you're going to work. And you'll connect remotely into an Amazon Web Services private cloud. And regardless of the kind of machine you come in on, whether it's a Mac or whatever, you're going to have a Windows 7 virtual desktop in this environment. And later we'll also give you a Linux machine because some of the tools you'll use do not run on Windows. And so you'll get used to working in that environment. And then right away, you're asked to go and break into that web server and verify that it's vulnerable. So, I mentioned this is a little artificial. So students ask, is it okay to do this? So we collected some of the questions our early students had, and we asked some government recommended experts to answer them. So here's someone answering that question.
So I'm out on my favorite site and I happen to notice that there's a directory traversal bug inside of their site. People ask, well, is it okay for me to go fix that bug on their site? The answer is no. It is absolutely not okay to hack another person's site, even if you're trying to do good or fix the site.
So he goes on, he talks about something called responsible disclosure. And the right thing to do is to privately disclose to the site's owners that you've discovered a vulnerability. And then if they don't fix it in a reasonable length of time, you can disclose the vulnerability publicly, but you can never go in and fix that vulnerability yourself. So let's go on. So the supposed vulnerability is something called a local file inclusion exploit. And let me explain what that is in case you don't know. So you know what a website is, right? It's just a collection of files. And your browser just tells the web server, send me the file for this page. And then your browser renders it. Well, if a site has a local file inclusion vulnerability, you can request files that are elsewhere on the server that aren't part of the website, like the file where the hash encoded passwords are stored. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to see if that happens, see if that vulnerability exists. Before you do that, though, you're asked to take a look at the site. You know, did the bad guys do something to it? Did they install any malware, anything suspicious? Did they change things on the site? So you should go and take a comprehensive look at the site. Then we'll dig down below the surface of a site, which users typically encounter, and we introduce you to how a browser requests pages from a web server. And you will use a tool called Burp Suite, which will sit between your computer, between your web browser, and the site, and will allow you to redirect queries so you can try to request files that aren't part of the website. So you say, wow, how do I learn to use Burp Suite? Well, we have not one, but we have 4 video tutorials on aspects of using Burp Suite, and you can see they're time-coded, so you can refer back to them as you need to. We also have a learning resource on local file inclusion vulnerabilities and how to fix them, because if you discover there is indeed a vulnerability, you will have to fix it. The web server is a Linux machine, not a Windows machine, so you need to know how passwords are stored in Linux. And passwords are not, there's a password file in Linux, but the passwords aren't stored there. They're stored in another file called shadow. You need to understand the relationship between those files and how to find them on a server. And then we also have resources on a tool called John the Ripper, which is kind of a standard password cracking tool. So you will exploit the vulnerability. You will crack the webmaster's password. You will find a hash encoded version of the webmaster's password in the shadow file. You'll crack it using John the Ripper. You might wonder, you know, why is John the Ripper legal? And so we have questions about that. We have questions about things like strong passwords. And then you will submit a report to your boss. And then your boss will give you guidance on the next steps to accomplish. And I won't go into that part of it, but I will go on and show you just a little bit of the next task. And in this task, you're going to work with a senior defensive analyst who's again fictional. And you can see he's a real people person. Pleasure to meet you personally, virtually. Now the pleasantries are out of the way, let's get to work. So what happened here is the Security Operations Center of the American Embassy in London noticed suspicious traffic to and from the personal laptop of military aid. And this is real, by the way. So the embassy has what's called full packet capturing. It can capture all of its network traffic. And so an analyst in the embassy grabbed a file of network traffic associated with that laptop and sent it to Cyber Team 10 for analysis. And you are asked to analyze that network traffic at the packet level and determine what happened. You know, was it malicious? Where did it originate? What happened? Was the guy's computer infected with malware? If so, what kind of malware? And then as you do an investigation like this, you come up with a lot of questions yourself. And you should ask and answer those questions as part of your investigation. So anyway, those are a couple of examples of what tasks in the course are like. So are there new questions, John?
No, I've just been having some back and forth with the group as a whole. Thanks, Ray.
Okay, so let's go back to this then. So you need to be reasonably computer literate. I mean, cybersecurity is a computer job, and you need to be comfortable working with computers and doing low-level stuff on computers, but you need not be a programmer. You do need to successfully complete the immediate immersion course to go forward and enroll in the later courses. And because the Defense Department funded this, only US citizens and green card holders can register for the attack course. And you need to have a modern computer with a high-speed internet connection, because you will be connecting and working in a virtual environment. And if you don't have a modern computer and a high-speed internet connection, it will be a pain.
Ray, an earlier question was around the idea of how you're going to be setting up their computer prior, which means, you know, what are the prerequisites for the first course? Are there readings? Are there websites? Is there an environment you're going to be loading up on their own laptop?
You'll be working in this private cloud environment, but when you do the pre-work before beginning the program, we will ask you to download a network traffic analysis tool called Wireshark to your own local machine and do some very simple analyses. And that will just get you used to looking at computer network traffic. We'll also recommend some video tutorials on computer networks and protocols if you're not familiar with them. And we'll also recommend a book that has some very good readings on doing network traffic analysis. And
Ray, a good question came through. I'm a .NET developer working on a H-1B visa. Does that mean that that person can only do the first part of the course?
Well, I mean, we can talk about it when we get there. It is a real possibility that the attack course would not be available to that person. It might depend on their country of origin and things like that. I mean, if they're from, say, a strong American ally like a NATO country or something like that, we can probably swing it. In other cases, we might not be able to.
Let's see. So they're from India. What's your reaction to that?
I don't know. I certainly have to check.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for the question.
But just to add something, we do have students who go through just the defensive portion of the program, and that does equip you to do jobs like being a security operations center analyst or digital forensics analyst or incident responder. The attack course is an add-on, and what we see is that not all students feel motivated to go on and take that course. Okay, go on.
Yes, please.
Okay, so if you'd like to take it beginning in the winter quarter or winter semester, whatever we call it, we'd like you to register by January 6th, and that will give you a week to do the pre-work before the program formally begins. And you can enroll either by calling this number, or you can enroll directly online.
Yeah, Ray, let me step in there just for a second. So this is a cohort that we're starting in January, and the first course does run for 4 weeks. You should plan for about an additional 25 hours of learning and coursework per week. So that's just gives you a first window as to what the actual core educational objectives are. and the time that you need to allocate to meet those core objectives. And I'll just say from the get-go that that we've had some good responses to the Immersion program. You know, this is a different type of learner, and it's very important that once you get enrolled in the class, stay on top of it. Don't get behind. Would you agree with that, Ray?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it moves more quickly than you think. And we do believe that there is a benefit to being completely immersed in a complex subject like this when you're learning it.
The question is, will this session be available? And it will be available on our site in about a week.
Okay, is that a question for me or?
Now that's a question that I just answered for the group.
Oh, okay, just checking. So I guess we go to this slide and we'll certainly be glad to answer any more questions you have.
Let's see if anything else came in. No, do we have any other questions out there from anyone else? So let's see, I'm going to answer a couple questions right now. So the cost of the program, the first course, it's 4 weeks long, and the course is $1,599. There is financing available. When you go to our website, you'll have contact information around that. In the course restrictions regarding the person from India and that registration, why don't you contact me directly? And my email is at the start of this program, which you can have. I'll type that back out to the group. So if anyone has any other further questions, you can just contact me directly on any of these issues. And Ray, we got one more question.
Okay.
I think that's it. Everything else is more admin, which I will answer myself.
Okay, great.
Everyone, I want to thank you for attending the information webinar. Ray, thank you for your time.
Yes, and thank you all very much for attending. And if this sounds like a good opportunity to you, we hope to see you in January.
Very good. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks. And I'll sign off and say have a good evening, everybody.